The starlight of 1,000 captured suns bled through the crystalline dome of the Grand Conclave, bathing the chamber in a cold, eternal twilight. Here, at the apex of the Vexian Consortium, silence was a currency more valuable than worlds. Tonight, it was a currency spent with reckless abandon. High Arbiter Kalen of the Third Echelon stood before the central holographic dais, the ancient obsidian floor cool beneath his feet, reflecting the swirling nebulae above as if the universe itself were a shallow pool. His breathing was a measured, silent thing, a discipline honed over centuries, yet inside his multifaceted mind, a storm of dissonant thoughts raged. Before him, the conclave was a garden of petrified anxieties. The delegates from every core world and protectorate sat in their tiered alcoves, their forms cloaked in shadows and protocol, their collective fear a palpable pressure in the rarefied air. The crisis was a simple one, as stark and brutal as a dying star. The sovereignty of Core, a splinter faction led by a charismatic and ruthless warlord, had seceded. They had amassed a fleet of staggering proportions, a weapon forged in defiance and fury, and now they sat poised at the nexus of worlds, a strategic chokepoint of such cosmic importance that to lose it was to lose the consortium itself. The debate had raged for cycles. Strategies were proposed and discarded, alliances tested, and ancient treaties invoked. But the argument always circled back to the same impossible, maddening variable: the humans. "It is an insult," growled a voice that seemed to shear the silence into pieces. Vorlag, the supreme commander of the Consortium Defense Fleet, stepped forward from his alcove. His carapace, a dark, jagged crimson, seemed to absorb the starlight, and his presence was one of pure, unyielding mass. "They were offered a seat on this council, a place of honor among the elder races. We shared our knowledge, our star charts, and in our moment of gravest peril they send a single vessel, one ship, to face a fleet that could blot out a sun." He gestured with a heavy, clawed hand toward the central dais. The hologram flickered, resolving into a real-time tactical display of the Nexus. On one side, a swarm of brilliant, angry crimson icons pulsed, the core armada. It was a terrifying sight, a plague of warships so dense they resembled a blood clot in the arteries of space. On the other side, positioned in a geosynchronous orbit over the Nexus's primary planet, was a lone icon. A single point of serene azure light. "The designation they have provided is the *Unsentinel, Kalen said, his voice a low, resonant hum that carried across the vast chamber. "They have offered no other information. They have refused all direct hails from the Consortium fleet. They simply wait." "They mock us," Vorlag spat. "This humanity is a race of infants, barely a few millennia into their interstellar age. They have no concept of true power, of the calculus of warfare that has governed this galaxy since the dawn of time. They believe a symbolic gesture will deter Grand Marshal Tyrok. He will vaporize their little ship and use its molten hull as a monument to his victory." Another delegate, a wispy, ethereal being of pure energy contained within a crystalline frame, pulsed with soft, chiming light. "Perhaps it is a vessel of unimaginable power, a singularity weapon, a reality-altering device." The voice was like wind chimes, melodic but thin. Vorlag scoffed, a harsh, grating sound. "An infantile fantasy. Power is mass, power is numbers. Power is the overwhelming application of kinetic and thermal energy. The core have it, we have it. The humans with their one ship have nothing. They are either fools or they are cowards attempting to appear relevant without committing to the fight. We must order them to withdraw. Their destruction will only serve as a prelude to our own." Kalen held up a hand, a gesture for silence that carried the weight of his office. The murmuring in the alcove ceased. He felt the gaze of every delegate, every ancient mind, fixed upon him. He was the High Arbiter, the one tasked with navigating the treacherous currents of galactic diplomacy, and this human enigma was a current he could not chart. He had studied them. He had read every translated text, every philosophical treatise, every historical record the Consortium's archives possessed on this fledgling species. They were a paradox, a species capable of profound brutality and breathtaking compassion. They built cathedrals and concentration camps. They wrote symphonies and detonated atomic bombs on their own world. Their history was a litany of self-inflicted wounds, yet they had endured. They had reached for the stars not with a unified, singular purpose like the Vexians, but as a fractured, bickering, chaotic collection of tribes who had somehow, against all odds, stumbled into the cosmos. "To assume they are fools is a mistake," Kalen said, his voice resonating with a certainty he did not feel. "Their logic may be alien to us, but it is not absent. We have underestimated them before. When they first emerged, we believed their chaotic data networks and fragmented political structures were signs of a primitive society. We later discovered that this chaos was a source of incredible resilience, a decentralized strength we could not comprehend. Their single ship is not an act of ignorance, it is a statement. We must endeavor to understand the language of that statement before we react. The language is simple, Vorlag countered, his voice dripping with contempt. It is the language of surrender. They are telling Tyrock that they will not interfere. We are on our own, and if we are on our own, then we must strike now with the full force of the consortium fleet. We have the numbers to match the core, but our supply lines are stretched. Every moment we hesitate, Tyrock reinforces his position. The debate swirled around Kalen, a vortex of fear and pride. The delegates argued over fleet dispositions, economic sanctions, the political cost of a protracted war. But Kalen's focus remained on the single defiant point of blue light in the hologram, the Sentinel. The name itself was a clue. A sentinel is a guard, a watcher. It does not act, it observes. But what were they watching for, and why did their silent, solitary vigil feel more menacing than the entire core armada? He thought of his one encounter with a human diplomat years ago during their formal introduction to the consortium. The human had been a woman, small and fragile by Vexian standards. She had not postured, she had not made demands. She had listened. She had watched. Her eyes, two small circles of startling blue, seemed to see not his rank or his carapace, but the ancient weariness within him. She had spoken of concepts that were, to the Vexian mind, almost poetic abstractions, of hope not as a statistical probability, but as a moral imperative, of peace not as the absence of conflict, but as the presence of justice. At the time, he had found it quaint. Now he wondered if he had missed the entire point. "They are waiting for Tyrock to hail them," Kalen said, the realization crystallizing in his mind with sudden, chilling clarity. "They have positioned themselves not as a challenge to the core fleet, but as a barrier to the planet. A moral barrier. They know Tyrock. They have studied him as we have. He is a creature of pure ego. He cannot abide a variable he does not control. He will not be able to resist hailing them, to demand their subservience, to gloat before he destroys them." Vorlag let out a low chuckle. "And what will that accomplish? A few moments of meaningless defiance before oblivion. The humans will die, and we will be no closer to a solution." "Perhaps," Kalen conceded, his gaze never leaving the blue icon. "But I do not believe the humans have sent one of their own on a journey of hundreds of light years merely to die for a principle. There is a strategy at play here, a strategy that operates on a level we are not accustomed to. We will not order them to withdraw. We will watch, we will listen, and we will prepare our fleets to act on whatever follows." The High Arbiter's word was final. A heavy, reluctant silence fell over the conclave. Vorlag crossed his massive arms, a gesture of profound disapproval, but he did not argue further. The delegates returned to their silent communion, their collective attention now focused on the hologram, on the two forces poised at the edge of the abyss. The red swarm and the single blue star, an equation of power so imbalanced, so illogical, that it felt like a page torn from a madman's diary. And yet, for the first time in cycles, Kalen felt a flicker of something other than despair. It was not hope. It was a terrifying, exhilarating curiosity. The universe was about to learn the true meaning of human calculus. The wait was an agony of stretched time. In the grand conclave, every tick of the chronometers echoed like a drumbeat heralding a war. Kalen had the chamber's sensory outputs linked directly to the forward observation posts of the consortium fleet, a vast armada holding a cautious distance from the Nexus system, a silent confederation of warships waiting for a signal, for a sign. The feeds showed nothing but the cold, indifferent starfield, the distant glow of the core fleet's engine signatures, and the unwavering pinprick of the asterisk UN's sentinel. It did not move. It did not emit any detectable energy signatures beyond standard life support and station-keeping thrusters. It was a rock in the river of cosmic events, and the river was about to flood. Then it happened. A new icon appeared on the dais, a tight-beam communication channel originating from the core command vessel, the Iron Hand Asterisk, and directed squarely at the human ship. Grand Marshal Tyrock was making his move. Kalen felt a ripple of tension pass through the conclave. G leaned forward in his alcove, his posture radiating a grim, vindicated satisfaction. He was about to witness the folly of the humans firsthand. "Patch the communication through," Kalen commanded, his voice unnaturally steady. "Audio and visual if the humans permit it." The technicians, spectral figures working in the sunken pits around the dais, complied. A moment later, a new holographic window opened. On one side was the bridge of the Asterisk Iron Hand Asterisk. It was a place of brutalist architecture, all sharp angles and glowing red instrumentation. Grand Marshal Tyrock stood center stage, a towering figure of his species, the core, a reptilian race bred for conquest. His scales were the color of tarnished iron, and a fresh scar ran down one side of his face, a testament to his violent rise to power. He smirked, a predator savoring the moment before the kill. Human vessel * Sentinel, Tyrok's voice boomed, a gravelly pronouncement of doom. You are trespassing in the sovereign territory of the Corps. You are unregistered, unsanctioned, and an obstruction to a necessary military action. I'm Grand Marshal Tyrok. I offer you one chance to state your purpose before I eradicate you from this system. The other side of the holographic window remained dark for a few heartbeats. Kalen held his breath. Then an image resolved. It was not the bridge of a warship. There were no flashing lights, no uniformed officers scurrying in the background. It was a simple room decorated with a profound and startling austerity. The walls were a soft, neutral gray. A single, elegant piece of wood, dark and polished, stood behind a figure. It was a human woman. She was seated. She wore no uniform, no armor, only a simple, dark blue garment that seemed to absorb the light. Her hair was silver, pulled back from a face that was a roadmap of fine lines, but her eyes were sharp and clear, the same impossible blue as her ship's icon on the tactical display. She was old, Kalen realized, by human standards ancient, and she projected an aura of calm so absolute it was in itself a form of aggression. Grand Marshal Tyrok, she said. Her voice was quiet, yet it filled the grand conclave with its clarity. It was not the voice of a soldier, but of a scholar, a poet. I am Ambassador Eva Rostova of the United Nations. The purpose of the * Sentinel is to bear witness. Tyrok threw his head back and laughed, a harsh, barking sound. To bear witness? You have come all this way to watch your own demise? I am not a performer in your historical theater, Ambassador. I am a conqueror. Now, for the last time, state your purpose, or I will open fire. Ambassador Rostova did not flinch. She did not raise her voice. She simply held his gaze, a look of profound, almost sorrowful contemplation on her face. My purpose is to ask you a question, Grand Marshal. Do the people of Corps truly desire this war? Do the soldiers under your command, the families on your home worlds, do they understand the price of your ambition? Did you tell them that the consortium's last offer of peace included full economic partnership and autonomous governance, an offer you rejected without consulting your own legislative body? The smirk vanished from Tyrok's face. His eyes narrowed. You have no knowledge of our internal affairs. Your intelligence is faulty. You are stalling. Our intelligence is not faulty, Rostova replied, her tone still level, still maddeningly calm. We have simply been listening. The entire galaxy broadcasts its hopes and fears into the void. One must only have the patience to listen. Your communications are filled with discrepancies. The official communiques to your people speak of consortium aggression. Your private communications with your inner circle speak of resource acquisition and personal glory. I ask you again, have you secured the consent of your own civilization for the path you have chosen? In the conclave, a stunned silence reigned. This was not diplomacy as they knew it. This was something else entirely. It was a vivisection, a laying bare of motives with the precise, bloodless skill of a master surgeon. Vorlag's knuckles were white where he gripped the edge of his alcove. Tyrok's face was now a mask of pure fury. You dare to lecture me on governance? You, from a species that spent 1,000 years butchering itself over invisible gods and colored patches of dirt. Your pathetic ship will be a cloud of atoms in moments. Weapons fire at will. Erase them. On the bridge of the * Iron Hand *, a weapons officer reached for a console. But Ambassador Rostova spoke again, her voice cutting through the tension like a beam of light. Firing on this vessel would be an unwise course of action, Grand Marshal. Are you threatening me? Tyrok roared. No, she said, and for the first time a flicker of something like ice entered her voice. I am informing you of a consequence. The * Sentinel is not a warship. As she spoke these words, a new energy bloomed from the human vessel. It was not a weapon charging. It was something far, far larger, a wave of energy broad and diffuse expanding from the * Sentinel at the speed of light. On the tactical display, the azure icon of the human ship began to pulse, and from it a web of impossibly fine lines spread out, enveloping the entire Corps armada. It was not an attack. It was a broadcast. What is this? Vorlag demanded, his voice tight with confusion. Kalen could only watch, mesmerized. The data streams from the consortium's listening posts were flooding the conclave's network. The humans were broadcasting, not propaganda, not threats. They were broadcasting raw, unencrypted data. It was the complete, unredacted record of every communication Tyrok and his conspirators had ever made. The secret deals with resource cartels, the plans to purge his own military of dissenters after the war. The doctored intelligence reports used to justify the secession. The economic projections that showed the Corps homeworlds falling into poverty to fund his war machine. And most damningly, the full unedited transcript of the consortium's final peace offer, the one he had claimed never existed. They were broadcasting it all on every open channel, directly to the bridges and mess halls and engineering bays of every ship in the core fleet. The Sentinel was not a warship. It was a library. A truth engine. The effect was instantaneous and catastrophic. The tactical display, which had been a sea of disciplined, unified red, began to fracture. The icons blinked, changed color, moved erratically. The consortium's comm-intercepts told the story. Arguments were breaking out on the bridges of core destroyers. Captains were demanding answers from their squadron leaders. Entire battle groups were falling silent as their crews absorbed the sheer, overwhelming weight of their leader's betrayal. On the screen, Tyrock stood frozen, his face a canvas of disbelief turning to raw panic. "Shut it down, block their transmission, jam their frequencies," he bellowed. His communications officer looked up, his expression one of dawning horror. "Sir, we can't. Their signal it's everywhere. It's not a broadcast, it's resonant. It's like they're making our own comm systems rebroadcast the signal. They've turned our entire network against us." The chaos escalated. A squadron of core frigates near the edge of the formation turned and powered down their weapon systems, their icons shifting from red to a neutral gray. A cruiser, the Asterisk Corps' Vengeance Asterisk, opened a channel not to Tyrock, but to the rest of the fleet, its captain openly calling for the Grand Marshal's arrest. The ironclad discipline of the Corps Armada, the force that was meant to shatter the consortium, was devouring itself from within. Ship by ship, squadron by squadron, the great war machine was grinding to a halt, paralyzed by a single undeniable weapon, the truth. Tyrock stared at the image of the serene, elderly human woman who had not moved, who had not changed her expression. She simply sat there, a silent witness to the implosion she had engineered. His rage finally boiled over. "My ship! Fire on the human vessel! My personal guard on my command!" A few loyalists on the bridge of the Asterisk Iron Hand scrambled to comply. But it was too late. Two of Tyrock's own escort destroyers, ships that had flown beside his flagship for years, turned their primary cannons not on the Sentinel, but on the Asterisk Iron Hand itself. Their weapon systems charged, a clear, unmistakable threat. A new voice came over the fleet-wide channel, the captain of the Asterisk Corps' Vengeance Asterisk. "Grand Marshal Tyrock, you are relieved of command under Article 7 of the Corps Sovereignty Charter. Surrender your vessel and yourself to face charges of treason. The war is over." The great red swarm was now a fractured mosaic of gray, blinking yellow, and a few remaining, isolated pockets of red. It was not a fleet anymore. It was a crime scene, utter chaos. Not the chaos of battle, but the chaos of a paradigm collapsing. The chaos of 1,000 minds suddenly, violently liberated from a lie. Ambassador Rostova finally broke her silence. Her gaze was still fixed on Tyrock, whose face had crumpled in defeat. "Power, Grand Marshal," she said, her voice soft but carrying the immense weight of the moment, "is not the ability to compel obedience. It is the ability to inspire consensus. You have failed to understand this, and that is why you have lost." With a final, gentle nod, her image faded from the screen. The communication link was severed. In the vast, silent chamber of the Grand Conclave, no one spoke. Kalen looked at the holographic display, at the shattered remains of what had been the greatest threat the consortium had ever faced. A war that would have cost trillions of lives and shattered galactic stability had been averted. Not a single shot had been fired by the human ship. Not a single life had been lost at its hands. Vor. Lag sank back into his alcove, his massive form seeming to shrink. The certainty, the arrogance was gone, replaced by a profound and humbling awe. He looked at Kalen, his expression one of complete bewilderment. "Their weapon," Vorlag whispered, the words barely audible. "Their weapon was clarity." Kalen could only nod, his own mind struggling to encompass the scale of what he had just witnessed. He looked at the single, serene point of blue light, still holding its silent vigil in the heart of the storm it had created, and then calmed. The humans had not come to fight a war. They had come to end one. And they had done it by reminding the galaxy that the most powerful force in the universe was not a warship, or an army, or an empire. It was an idea. And the idea they had unleashed today was one that would change the course of galactic history forever. In the aftermath, a new kind of silence settled over the Grand Conclave, one born not of tension but of profound reflection. The core fleet was in disarray, its command structure decapitated, its new, provisional leadership already sending frantic messages of reconciliation to the consortium. The war was over before it began. The delegates, once so certain in their philosophies of power and control, were now adrift in a sea of new, unsettling possibilities. Everything they thought they knew about conflict, about strategy, about power itself, had been rendered obsolete by a single, quiet conversation. High Arbiter Kalen had dismissed the conclave, but he remained in the chamber, standing before the dais where the tactical display still glowed. The Nexus of Worlds was now a system of paralyzed ships and frantic, confused diplomacy, and at its center, the asterisk UN's sentinel remained, a silent blue star of unwavering calm. He had sent a message to the human vessel, a formal request for communication on behalf of the consortium. He did not know if they would answer. He felt like a primitive tribesman who had just witnessed a god descend from the heavens, and now he was trying to ask it for a diplomatic treaty. The signal came. The human ambassador was willing to speak with him. Kalen's heart pounded a slow, heavy rhythm against his inner ribs. He straightened himself, drawing on centuries of diplomatic protocol, and accepted the channel. The serene face of Ambassador Eva Rostova appeared before him once more. She was in the same simple room, her expression as placid as a still lake. There was no triumph in her eyes, no hint of condescension. There was only a quiet, patient attentiveness. "High Arbiter Kalen," she said, her voice as calm as ever. "It is an honor." "Honor is mine, Ambassador," Kalen replied, his own voice sounding hollow and inadequate to his ears. "On behalf of the Vexian Consortium and its member worlds, I offer our profound and deepest gratitude. You have averted a catastrophic war. You have saved more lives than we can count." "We did what was necessary, High Arbiter," she said simply. "A conflict based on deceit is a poison that sickens the entire galactic body. We chose to administer an antidote rather than amputate a limb." The metaphor was elegant, precise, and utterly terrifying in its implications. The humans saw the galaxy not as a collection of competing empires, but as a single living organism, and they had appointed themselves its physicians. "Your methods," Kalen began, struggling for the right words. "They are unlike anything we have ever conceived. You wield information as we wield particle beams. You dismantled an entire fleet without launching a single missile. Why? Why intervene in this way? You could have brought a fleet of your own. You could have demonstrated your power in a language we all understand." Rostova's expression softened, a subtle shift that conveyed a deep and ancient weariness. "Because that language, High Arbiter, is a dead one. It speaks only of endings, of destruction. It cannot build. It cannot create. For generations, humanity spoke that language to itself. We learned its grammar of pain intimately. We learned that a victory won through force is temporary, for it breeds resentment and the desire for revenge. A victory won through understanding, however, can be permanent." She leaned forward slightly, her blue eyes seeming to pierce through the holographic display to look directly into Kalen's soul. "We did not intervene to save the consortium, High Arbiter, not solely. We intervened to save the idea of civilization itself. Your conflict with the core was a symptom of a deeper illness that affects all advanced species. The belief that power is a zero-sum game, the illusion that security can be found in a larger fleet, a stronger shield. This way of thinking is a cage, and it keeps you all from seeing the universe as it truly is." Kalen felt a chill run through him, a feeling deeper than mere political fear. This was an existential dread, a sense that the very foundations of his reality were being systematically dismantled by this soft-spoken old woman. "And how do the humans see the universe, Ambassador?" Instead of answering, she made a small gesture with her hand. The view behind her shimmered and was replaced by a star chart. It was a map of their galaxy, a familiar swirl of spiraling arms and nebular clouds. But there was something new. A point of origin far outside the galactic disk, in the cold, empty darkness of intergalactic space. From this point, a faint line extended, pointing not at a star or a system, but at the galaxy as a whole. "For 50 of our years," Rostova said, her voice now low, grave, and imbued with an incredible weight, "the asterisk sentinel and vessels like it have been engaged in their primary mission. Not diplomacy, not defense. Listening. We have built instruments capable of hearing the whispers of the cosmos, of detecting patterns in the background radiation of spacetime itself. And we found something." She magnified the point of origin. It resolved into a complex waveform, a signal of staggering mathematical and physical complexity. It was not a language in any recognizable sense. It was a schematic, a diagram of decay. "This signal is not a message," she continued. "We do not believe its source is biological, or at least not as we understand it. It is ancient, perhaps older than the galaxy itself, and what it is broadcasting is a warning. A diagnostic. It is describing a process, a slow, inexorable change in the fundamental structure of spacetime, a kind of cosmic erosion. The laws of physics as we know them are beginning to fray at the edges." Kalen stared at the signal, at the impossible alien mathematics scrolling beside it. He could not comprehend its full meaning, but he could feel the truth of it in the deepest parts of his being. This was not a lie. This was not a manipulation. This was a revelation. "Process is slow," Rostova said, But it is accelerating. Our models predict that within a few thousand years, interstellar travel will become impossible as spacetime becomes too unstable. Within 10,000, entire star systems may begin to lose cohesion. The universe is getting older. It is becoming unwell. This is the great enemy, not the core, not the consortium, not some rival empire from another galaxy. The enemy is entropy itself, given a new and terrifying agency. The Grand Conclave chamber, with its captured starlight and its monuments to 1,000 victorious wars, suddenly felt small and fragile, a child's sandcastle on the shore of an infinite, rising ocean. Every war the Vexians had ever fought, every border they had secured, every enemy they had vanquished, it was all meaningless. They had been fighting over the furniture in a house that was slowly, silently, collapsing around them. "This is why we sent one ship," Rostova concluded, her voice bringing Kalen back from the precipice of despair. "This is why we acted as we did, to demonstrate in the clearest possible terms that the old ways are a luxury we can no longer afford. The galaxy cannot be squandering its energy, its resources, and its brightest minds on petty squabbles over territory and ideology. The challenges ahead will require the combined knowledge of every species, every civilization working in concert. We do not have time to prove our strength with fleets and armies. We must prove our wisdom with unity and purpose." The Sentinel, he realized, it was not just a watcher. It was a herald, a harbinger of a new age, an age where the only war that mattered was the war against cosmic decay, against the dying of the light. The human intervention was not a power play. It was a lesson, an invitation. "What you are proposing," Kalen said, his voice a hoarse whisper, "is a unity on a scale we have never imagined." "It is the only proposal that offers a chance of survival," Rostova replied. "Humanity is young, we are still learning, but we have learned this much: the universe does not care for flags or empires. It is vast and it is indifferent. The only meaning to be found is the meaning we create together. The only shelter is the one we build together." Her image flickered slightly. "The Asterisk Sentinel has completed its primary objective here. We have shared all our data on the signal with your scientific bodies. The choice of what to do with that knowledge is now yours. We hope you will join us. We cannot face the long night alone." The hologram dissolved, leaving Kalen alone again in the silent, starlit chamber. He stood motionless for a long time, the weight of a dying universe settling upon his shoulders. He looked up at the crystalline dome, at the beautiful, swirling nebulae that were now just a facade, a painted curtain hiding a terrifying, final truth. Vorlag was wrong. The humans were not infants. They were the first adults in a galaxy of squabbling children. They had looked past the playground politics and seen the storm gathering on the horizon. Their calm, their logic, their et. Hicks, it was not a sign of weakness. It was the result of a perspective so vast, so profound, that it dwarfed every ambition, every fear, every hatred the consortium had ever known. He walked to the edge of the dais and placed a hand on the cool, obsidian floor. He felt the faint vibrations of the station's life support, a steady, rhythmic pulse. The pulse of a civilization that had believed itself to be the master of its own destiny. Today they had learned they were merely passengers on a ship sailing into an unknown and possibly final darkness. But they were not alone. He thought of the single blue light, the Sentinel Asterisk. He thought of Eva Rostova's calm, wise eyes. There was a path forward, a difficult, uncertain path, one that would require them to abandon centuries of tradition, of pride, of fear. But it was a path. The humans had not just offered them a warning, they had offered them a future. With a newfound resolve, High Arbiter Kalen turned away from the hologram. His work was just beginning. He had to convince the Conclave. He had to convince 1,000 worlds to look up from their petty disputes and see the greater truth that had been shown to them. He had to teach them the new language, the language the humans had spoken today. The language of unity. For the long night was coming, and they would need to learn to be a light for one another if they were to have any hope of seeing the dawn. The age of empires was over. The age of sentinels had begun.